After my sighting in 1993, once I came back from guard duty to my civilian job, the first thing I did is make a beeline for the library and check out as many books as they'd allow me to on Bigfoot. I wanted to learn the newest, most current information about what I had just seen. And mind you, I hadn't read one single book on the subject. But after a time, once I digested that, instead of looking for the newest, most current uh, information, I got to thinking, these things didn't just come around when Europeans came on the scene some 250 years ago. They certainly had to be around longer than that. So that inspired me to actually go do 180 degrees and look for the oldest sightings I could find, which proved to be challenging. But if you know where to look in historical documents and whatnot, there's a lot of information. My thought being, we've been here less than 300 years, we being Europeans. Native Americans have been here for 14, perhaps 15,000 years. So they had to have lived symbiotically with them. They certainly must have had encounters, and in fact, they had a lot of encounters. But they considered them a tribe. They called them the first ones, and sometimes the old ones, because they were there before they came on the scene. So I think there's a considerable amount of knowledge passed down from generation to generation about these creatures. And in talking with Native Americans, without exception, they all had some sort of story about these creatures. Now, they may call them something else, but the description and their behavior and the size and everything is a perfect match for what we call Bigfoot. Following my sighting, I looked for some outlet, I guess, to explain my story, and it's very difficult for people to do that. But in time, I met some folks with the Bigfoot Research Project headed out of Parkdale and led by Peter Byrne. He kind of took me under his wing, and we became good friends, and he introduced me to a lot of different people. And over time, we did investigations and some fairly lengthy expeditions in mostly in the Oregon area, a little in California. But no, this has been an amazing journey for me. I can't help but ponder how 25 seconds of my entire adult life, at that time I was 34, those 25 seconds have changed my life entirely. Everything I've done since that time is can be lead back to something about that sighting. The people I've met, the things I've done, and it's it was an epiphany for me. I hadn't believed in them. Honestly, didn't care. I'd almost say I was agnostic, if you will. I just you don't grow up in the Pacific Northwest and not hear about them, but I certainly didn't think they were real. So now I don't have a choice. I can't unsee what I saw, and frankly, I wouldn't want to, because seeing Bigfoot is it's like a blessing and a curse. It's amazing to see something that is akin to winning the lottery, but at the same time, it's a curse in that you're possessed, really obsessed anyway, as far as trying to recreate that experience. As for me, it's a very personal thing and a scientific thing that drives me to do what I do. Researching Bigfoot is a passion of mine, and my ultimate goal is to get them officially recognized by science and ultimately classified and protected for future generations. I know they're out there. There is no doubt. I and other people that have seen them, we don't believe they exist. We know they do. And the issue for me is right now, with no laws on the books to protect them, it's open season. There's nothing to prevent somebody from intentionally killing one of these things. And so part of our mission statement with the American Primate Conservancy is the discovery, research, knowledge, recognition, and protection for these creatures. And the key word is protection. I've recently been working with different tribes, putting together a draft bill, if you will, that we plan to get put in effect on reservations and with different tribes. A Indigenous Peoples Protection, Bigfoot Protection Act, or whatever you want to call it. But we think it's going to be an easier sell to the indigenous people to put such laws on the books, strictly on the reservation, mind you, but this is part of their history. It's part of their culture. So in one sense, you're honoring their culture, elevating it, and at the same time protecting these wonderful creatures. Many times I've been approached by people when I talk about the protection aspects, and it's not uncommon for them to say, leave them alone, they're fine, they don't need our protection, and they're better off without the attention being brought to them. My reply is, how many Sasquatch are out there that you know of? Can you give me a number? And even if they give me an estimate, my next question is, how many were there 5,000 years ago? 10,000 years ago? Is their population on the decline? Are they increasing? What kind of habitat do they need? Is there certain food resources that contain enzymes or things that they need to survive, like skunk cabbage that we just consider a weed? You know, we need to find out the answer to all these questions. How long do they live? How many children do they have? All these questions, without being able to answer them with facts, is frankly ignorant. It's fantasy. And I think we need to approach these creatures just like we do any other animal, if they are animals. They could be hominid, but in any event, I think we need to approach it like we would any other species. It needs to be studied, and only through study are we going to be able to learn all these things. Frankly, I feel their discovery is inevitable. There's no question, as a living being, they're also a dying being. And whether they die by age or disease or injury, they're going to die one time or another. And I think it's inevitable, extremely rare, but inevitable, that we will find a body. As difficult it is to find a living Bigfoot, somewhere out there, there's a body, and there's got to be more than one. But once we get a body, whether it's killed accidentally or intentionally or just by nature, then we need to analyze it. First and foremost, a geneticist needs to do DNA studies. That's critical. An anthropologist would certainly want to get involved, doing skeletal measurements, if you will. Biologists, zoologists, you name it, there's going to be a flood of people. I dare say many who at one point said that they didn't believe it exists are going to come out of the woodwork and want to study these things. And so it's not going to be the end game for these things. I just consider that another chapter. Not unlike their exposure to the migration, the influx of Native Americans. I mean, that must have been shocking for them to see these smaller, hairless versions of themselves with language and able to create fire and buildings and plant and care for livestock. And that must have been pretty crazy for them. And I'm sure that it was as much of a shock to them to have to deal with this different species that have invaded their area that they've lived for a long time. So yeah, it'll be a game changer for both them and humans alike. It will be a shock to many people to know that these things are out there, but when you really sit down and think about it, and when the discovery gets a little older, then I think they're just going to have to come to understand that they're out here now. They've always been out here. We don't consider it really when we go out into the woods. When I saw the ones I saw, this was an area that I had hunted for years, Saddle Mountain unit, and what really struck me was, wow, these things had been out there. Every time I've been out there, they've been out there, and I had no idea. So I think in time, people just have to get used to their existence, and like I say, it'll be a new chapter. I visualize something like a national park, say like the Olympic National Forest, that it becomes a preserve and a place that if need be they can relocate them, and basically it would be a no-go zone for anybody but scientists, and just seed them out just like a reservation for Indians. Yeah, some of them might walk off, and then that's on their own, but I think if you gave them incentive, that they may stick around there, as long as people aren't going in there. That's what they're looking for. For a long time, I had bought into the theory that these creatures were perhaps a cousin, if you will, to the Gigantopithecus that's found in Eastern Asia. The concept was that during an ice age, when that Bering Sea froze over, that they crossed over from Asia into North America. But since then, I've had a change of heart about that. I honestly think what we're dealing with is a relic hominid of some sort. We've had Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, slightly different subspecies, if you will, of hominid. And it's the way that the natives have always referred to them, simply another tribe. Again, they describe them as the old ones or the first ones. And in talking with Native Americans, and I've dealt with many, I have yet to have one claim that it's simply an animal. They don't talk about it in that fashion at all. It is an ancient tribe, and they have a great deal of respect for them. And so today I lean more toward the hominid theory. I guess the real question is it a species or a subspecies? my guess is it's a species of its own. One of the biggest problems that we face in our research um, is really a series of things that tend to affect the credibility of our work. One, especially being hoaxing. I really don't think hoaxing plays a huge part in uh, eyewitness sightings, perhaps 1 or 2%. That's fairly rare, but people have been caught hoaxing and have as much as admitted so. The one thing about a hoax, though, that people need to keep in mind is a hoax is only good enough if you are able to say, gotcha. And so to do a hoax and sit back and watch people buy it and then not to be able to why would you just sit back and do nothing? Obviously your motive is to fool people and you'd want them to know. But again, hoaxing is fairly rare. Other things that affect the credibility of this discipline, if you will, is people that we call the fringe element or the woo, alternately. People that bring in, come up with a lot of off the wall, paranormal sort of explanations. Uh, I try to strictly study this on a purely scientific, biological level and nothing more. I think we can answer most things about these things in that kind of a conventional research style. And then there's the exploitation, if you will, with these creatures. Commercialization for everything from beef jerky to tires to campers, and in almost every case, it's done tongue-in-cheek and made fun of. So it's these things, these three things in particular, that are frustrating, to say the least. It takes away from the seriousness of what we do, and so those things have been out there, but we'll keep driving on.